Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host, with another marvelous video. This month, DC has launched their newest big crossover event, Night Terrors. Taking place after the events of Dark Crisis, the series introduces a new crisis in which the characters of DC, both heroes and villains, are taken into the realm of nightmares by the new villain, Insomnia. Although Night Terror is a 4-issue miniseries, there are several tie-in series showcasing the nightmares and struggles of the different characters. Created by writer Joshua Williamson and artist Giuseppe Camuncoli, the series has taken fans by storm, and while half of it was released in July, the remaining are to come in August. In today's video, we'll be talking about how each of the characters got trapped in the dream realm and their struggles until now. So, without any further delay, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Dr. Destiny. John Dee, aka Dr. Destiny, was an ancient sorcerer who could materialize dreams into reality with the help of the Dream Stone. He was an enemy of the Justice League and, following the events of the Dark Crisis, was imprisoned in Arkham, Gotham. The story of Dr. Destiny was showcased in Night Terror's First Blood issue #1. The issue begins with John sitting in a beautiful lucid dream with his wife and children. However, his wife's voice suddenly distorted and mucus and weeds began growing throughout her. The same happened to his children, and as the three of them approached him, John realized someone was messing with his dreams. He shouted out to the unknown entity to reveal itself, following which the dreamscape changed and brought John to the Hall of Justice. The entire world appeared grotesque with a hellish appearance, and while John knew he could gain control over the situation if he had the Dreamstone, mangled figures of the Justice League came out of a distorted poster and attacked him. John Dee is perplexed as to who is doing it and how it's even possible, and that's when a hellish voice screams at him, asking where the Nightmare Stone was. In the real world, John was in Arkham, and while he was in his nightmare, his body went into a seizure. Batman summoned Superman and Wonder Woman to the Hall of Justice as there was an alarm for a security breach. Once the three went inside to investigate, they found a distorted corpse of John Dee. As the three began pondering how John Dee managed to escape from Arkham and reach the Hall of Justice, Batman received a call from Harley Quinn. She informed Batman that John Dee in Arkham Tower was having a violent nightmare, and the doctors were unable to wake him up. When Batman reached Arkham, he witnessed nightmarish constructions from John Dee's body. The evil, unknown force manipulating the events took control over John's body and began communicating with Batman and Harley Quinn at Arkham Tower. It tore John Dee's chest open, following which the doctors declared him dead.
I thought I could redeem you. I was wrong.
Batman. Next, we have our favorite Caped Crusader Batman, who's returned after traveling to an alternate universe to avert the dangers of failsafe. Throughout his life, he struggled to attain the perfect mental and physical state which no other human could ever attain. However, there were a lot of sacrifices and hardships that he had to endure to maintain it. Night Terror Batman issue 1 gives us a glimpse of his training to overcome his fears so that no villain could capitalize on them. The issue begins with Batman diving underwater and remaining for as long as 24 hours, where, in his dreams, he relived the night his parents were killed. Probably that was the night he was most afraid. However, at the end of his session, he stated that nothing could make him overcome the incident. In the Night Terror saga, the story begins with Night Terror, First Blood issue #1, published on the 4th of July. Superman and Wonder Woman were summoned by Batman to the Hall of Justice as there was a recent intruder alert. The trio was unknowingly joined by Deadman, who had spotted something ghastly with the three superheroes. Upon learning that the real John Dee was in Arkham and suffering from violent nightmares, Batman made a rush for him. Upon reaching, he noticed the doctors trying their best to hold him down while he screamed in terror. In his words, John Dee stated that he should not acquire the Nightmare Stone. Batman tried to examine the wounds as his chest tore apart and the doctors declared him dead. There was a brief moment of silence as Batman showed his concerns about the Nightmare Stone, and suddenly, a ghostly voice stated that he wanted to know where the Nightmare Stone was. He added that long ago, John Dee had hidden the Nightmare Stone within the dreams of his enemies, and if Batman would help him find it, he could be his sidekick after he kills a few of his Robins. Soon, shadowy nightmare constructs began appearing and attacking him. The new villain unleashed his power, setting the entire world into a deep slumber. Batman shocked his heart to give him some adrenaline rush to stay awake, but despite all his efforts, he fell asleep. Deadman immediately possessed his body and began fighting the nightmarish constructs. Now Batman was in his dreams and fighting his nightmares. The new villain was aware of Batman's fears, and when Batman fell asleep, he was taken into Crime Alley, where his parents were killed. Batman found himself as a young Bruce wearing the suit he wore the night of his parents' death. However, Batman was always ready for such threats, and when his father called for him, He realized that all this was not real and recalled everything that led him to this. He tried waking up but couldn't, as his body was possessed by Deadman. He was next taken into a theater and shown the events taking place in the real world, where he was fighting the new threat Insomnia, along with other nightmarish constructs. Bruce was next sucked into a new dream where he was at his parents' home surrounded by the graves of all the people he'd lost and could lose, but all these failed to scare Batman. He shouted out to the new villain to reveal himself and get to the point, and that was when Insomnia revealed himself, dressed as Robin. Insomnia stated that growing up in Gotham, he's always been a big fan of Batman and wished to be his sidekick. All he wanted was his help to get the Nightmare Stone, and once he got it, all the nightmares of everyone could be done with. Soon, corpses of his family and friends woke up and attacked him, and Bruce fought them all until he began suffocating from within. A deadly bat resembling Man-Bat with a gun on his head came out of his throat, and it attacked him. Surprisingly, Bruce thanked Insomnia as it cleared out his thoughts, and now he wished to dig deeper into his own darkness and regain control of his body. Insomnia stated that all these dreams were a part of Bruce's creation and not his, and if he chose to dig deeper, that could be worse. Soon, the dreams changed and Bruce found himself in the body of Joe Chill just when he was about to pull the trigger of his gun at his parents. He tried to stop but had no control over the new body. The trigger was pulled and the issue ended. The next issue, which would be released in August, would continue with the story of Batman's nightmares. Superman. Like most heroes and villains, Superman too was one of the victims of the new threat, Insomnia. After the events of the Dark Crisis, Lex Luthor revealed that no matter his differences with Superman, the planet needed him. When Lex was arrested for the murder of Black, he handed over his company LexCorp to Superman under the contract that if he ever planned on handing it over to anyone else, the company would dissolve, resulting in large-scale unemployment in Metropolis. Thus, Superman had no choice but to take it, and the company was renamed Supercorp. In the Night Terror saga, when Superman, along with Batman, Wonder Woman and Deadman, learned that the corpse of Dr. Destiny at the Hall of Justice was a nightmare construct, he left to seek help from the supernatural neurologist department of his company. However, on his way, he was struck by Insomnia's spell of falling into eternal slumber. Superman's episode of Nightmares was showcased in his one-shot series Night Terror Superman Issue 1. While in flight, he fell asleep and thus began his nightmares. Once his eyes closed, he found himself in Daily Planet, with Lois and Jimmy asking him to complete the story before the deadline. Superman was perplexed as he clearly remembered the recent events of Dr. Destiny's corpse at the Hall of Justice. In the real world, Superman was shown to be falling from a great height into the ocean, while in his dreams, Perry showed him his latest newspaper title, Whole World Saved Forever, stating that ever since he and Lex joined hands, all problems of the world have been resolved. However, Superman stated that all this was not real, and Penny tore off his face to reveal himself as Insomnia. Although Superman fell into the ocean in the real world, in his dreams, he witnessed a massive tsunami striking Metropolis. He opened his shirt, but inside, there was no costume but a crooked S carved on his chest. Insomnia demanded to know where the Nightmare Stone was, but Superman had no clue what it was. Insomnia knew Superman's biggest loss was losing his close ones and soon shifted him into a series of nightmares where the world was ending by various means. Superman landed into another nightmare where he was standing on a mountain of skulls, where a winged creature skulls told him that all the skulls were that of his loved ones. The creature added that no matter what he did, he was going to outlive everybody and be lonely. The creature claimed himself to be a creation of Clark's own fears and called himself the Man of Screams. In order to torment Superman further, the creature showed him visuals of Krypton getting destroyed and him escaping. He added that he was a bullet targeted at Earth, and soon Earth would be suffering the same fate as Krypton. Superman fought the Man of Screams and managed to take away his scythe. Suddenly, Supergirl arrives and states that she too had been trapped in the world of nightmares and has been escaping from an army of monstrous Supergirls. Meanwhile, in the real world, Superman and many others have been saved by Aquaman and his family, who were somehow unaffected by Insomnia. Wonder Woman. As showcased in Night Terror, First Blood Issue No. 1, Wonder Woman, Batman and Superman learn that elements of the Nightmare Realm are taking shape in the real world. Moving on to Night Terror's Wonder Woman Issue 1, as Batman and Superman left for Arkham Tower and Supercorp, respectively, she stayed with Dr. Destiny's corpse and called in Zatanna, along with Detective Chimp, to study more about the source of the new crisis. However, when Insomnia pulled off his spell to put the world into a deep eternal slumber, she succumbed to it and fell asleep. When she opened her eyes, she found Bobo and herself in the realm of nightmares. Constantine joined them, and after pulling out a spell, he revealed an enormous maze before them, stating that the other members of the Justice League Dark were trapped somewhere inside the large labyrinth and they needed to find them. Detective Chimp was a bit hesitant, believing it to be a trap, but the three began their journey to the center, hoping to find their allies there. Constantine warned them that since this was the land of nightmares, all their fears would take shape and try to finish them off. Wonder Woman asked the two of them to stay connected to her lasso of truth, as it had the power to protect them. They arrived before the depiction of the cannibal demigod, Minotaur, Skeletor, and creepy and monstrous hands began appearing from the wall and attacking them. Wonder Woman's lasso of truth transformed into a barbed wire, leading to Constantine and Detective Chimp losing grip. Soon, the hands grabbed the two of them and dragged them into the wall, leaving Wonder Woman alone. After several attempts, Wonder Woman managed to break the wall and found another one with illustrations of the children of Zeus. Soon, her voice spoke to her, stating that all the children of Zeus turned out to be monsters, and she was also one of them, the worst one. As she continued listening to the voice, a figure emerged from her shield that appeared like a monstrous form of Wonder Woman and Medusa. The creature attacked her, and she battled with her full might. The creature shapeshifted into a huge serpent. Detective Chimp arrived at the scene, and that was when she got eaten by the massive serpent. Zatanna. When Insomnia unleashed his spell to put almost all villains and heroes into an eternal slumber, Zatanna was one of very few who managed to resist falling asleep. As shown in Night Terror's Zatanna issue number 1, when Diana and Detective Chimp fell asleep, Zatanna used a spell that kept her awake. However, that came at a cost, as she was then under the attack of the Sleepless Queen, her knights, Iron Maiden, and Sir Morbid. The issue begins at the Terrific Tower, with Red Tornado viewing the devastating situation of everyone falling asleep. Red Tornado was an android and was unaffected by Insomnia's sleep-inducing spell. As he was about to dispatch other robotic heroes to deal with the crisis, Zatanna made contact with Tower, calling for emergency help. However, the message couldn't be conveyed, and she used all her strength to summon Clifford Steele, aka Robot Man. Robot Man remained perplexed, but Zatanna yelled at his question and asked her to protect Wonder Woman and Detective Chimp. However, keeping her calm, Zatanna recalled that there was a panic room. She asked him to find a book named Michelle Remembers, and once Robot Man grabbed it, a secret passage opened. Robot Man entered the room with Wonder Woman and Detective Chimp's unconscious bodies, and Zatanna, in order to hold off the Sleepless Queen and her minions, used her magic to bring life into a giant dinosaur skeleton. It attacked them, and it gave Zatanna the time to escape into the room as well. The panic room was an enchanted one in the form of a maze. Sleepless Queen dispatched some of her dark magic into the room, while Zatanna and Robot Man walked toward a safe refuge. Zombified illusions of Dorothy Spinner, Josh Clay, Kate Godwin, and Sargon the Sorcerer appeared and tried stopping them before Robot Man punched them down. Finally, they entered a safe room and placed the bodies of Wonder Woman and Detective Chimp to safety. However, their peace was short-lived as Sleepless Knight suddenly appeared before them and stabbed Robot Man with his sword, converting him into his minion. Robot Man, before losing his senses, screamed at Zatanna to escape, and next, we see Sleepless Knight asking him to capture Zatanna. That's where the issue ended, and we're yet to see what happens next in the second issue of Night Terror's Zatanna, scheduled to be released in August. Detective Chimp. Bobo T. Chimpanzee, aka Detective Chimp, is definitely one of the highly skilled detectives of the DC universe, and following the events of the Dark Knight's Metal, he became the protector of the Mystic Dimension, known as Mirror, and a member of the Justice League Dark. When Dr. Destiny's corpse was found in the Hall of Justice and later revealed to be a nightmare construct, Bobo and Zatanna were called to look into the matter. When Insomnia made the entire world fall asleep, Bobo was one of them. Bobo's experience in the Nightmare Realm was showcased in Night Terror Wonder Woman issue 1. In the real Nightmare, when Bobo opened his eyes, he found Wonder Woman on the floor, but when he picked up her head, it changed into a slimy substance and washed away. Soon, Wonder Woman, who was also trapped in the realm of the nightmare, arrived and took Bobo with him. The two were met by John Constantine, who gave them a clue as to where they were and what were the possible dangers, as we just mentioned before. He mentioned that all the fears that each of them had would soon manifest and try to finish them off, and the only way to survive was to finish them first. On their way, they held on to Wonder Woman's lasso of truth, which could protect them from nightmares. However, as mentioned before, they were attacked, and Wonder Woman's lasso turned into a barbed wire, leading to Constantine and Bobo losing grip. The two were sucked into a wall, and on the other side, there were gigantic spiders and monsters. These were manifestations of Bobo's fears, and he blamed John for such happenings. He stated that he never had an affair with spiders until John mentioned them before. John used his sword of flame to decimate all of them in one go, but soon there were many more, and the two began running. While escaping, John and Bobo lost each other and ended up being separated. Bobo ran into Wonder Woman, who was facing her nightmare, taking the form of a giant serpent. Before Bobo could do much, the serpent ate Wonder Woman. John Constantine. In the Night Terror saga, John Constantine made his appearance in Night Terror's Wonder Woman. When Wonder Woman and Bobo were taken into the Nightmare Realm, Constantine found them and explained what was happening. He seemed to learn better about the place than the two and stated that he was inside the realm along with the other members of the Justice League Dark. He cast a spell, revealing a large labyrinth, and was aware that his teammates were somewhere trapped in it. As the three made their way, they were separated by the forces of the realm. John Constantine and Bobo faced a horde of monsters which were manifestations of Bobo's fears, and while they ran for their lives, Christmas, the two got separated. John cast a spell and turned into flames, and contacted every member of the Justice League Dark. However, he was unable to believe what he'd just seen. He walked through a gateway and found them. There was Zatanna, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, and the rest, but we know it was a nightmare. Zatanna expressed her dislike for John, stating that she doesn't even remember him now. He was once a member of the Justice League Dark, but all he did was drive them away. She added that John constantly reminded them of their dark past, so as to give him his brightest day, and she'd only stayed with him for so long because she'd once truly loved him. Green Lantern. Many superheroes were yet to learn of the new threat of Insomnia and his spell in the world. Unlike Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, they were not the first ones to learn about the appearance of nightmare constructs in the real world and were dealing with their respective issues. Hal Jordan was one of them. The story of Green Lantern Hal Jordan is showcased in Night Terror Green Lantern Issue 1 and begins with Hal attempting to save a private jet that had been hit by turbulence. As he opened the door of the cockpit, he suddenly found himself at his father's funeral and also transformed back into a child. Jessica, his mother, asked him to say goodbye to his father, Martin, and that was when a ghoulish version of his father began creeping out. Everyone around him turned into monsters and surrounded him. Even his mother changed into a monster, and as Hal tried running away, they asked him to come back and not be afraid. However, when he opened the door to escape, the dreamscape changed again. Hal found himself at Ferris Aircraft's hangar with Carol waiting for him. Carol informed him of his upcoming test flight for her company's investors. Hal had no clue that he was being played by Insomnia and considered his visions at the funeral a bad dream. When Carol showcased her frustration, Hal tried cracking jokes about it, as he would normally do. However, she clearly mentioned that if the test flight was not carried out smoothly, he'd be fired. As Hal got into the simulator's cockpit, the simulator took off. Hal remained perplexed, and it crashed into a desert where he found a dying Abin Sur who wanted to use his ring. Soon, there was an evil grin on Abin Sur's face, and he began draining Hal's life force using the ring. Abin Sur stated that the ring was not supposed to choose Hal as his successor, but rather a necessary sacrifice so that Abin could live and protect Earth from cosmic threats. Hal used a yellow metal to cut off his finger and escape, and as Abin charged toward him with a sword made out of his Green Lantern ring, Hal was transported into another reality. In this reality, he was in Oa, standing in front of the Guardians. The Guardians stated that Hal's actions had caused the death of a Green Lantern on Korugar. As Hal requested them to investigate the matter, the Guardians added that Hal was no longer a Green Lantern, especially after he abandoned the corpse when the United Planets took control of the galaxy. They also charged him with betraying his friend Kilowog. Hal remained perplexed as Kilowog stood beside him and yelled at the Guardians, demanding to know who they were. Soon, the Guardians and the rest of the Green Lantern shape-shifted into monstrous beings, and Hal used his power ring to create constructs of warriors to fight them. Hal emerged victorious, but a voice stated that there was one more door, indicating one more fear. Soon, a creature emerged from the Green Lantern central battery, and it was none other than Parallax, Hal's greatest nightmare. Flash. Barry Allen. Barry Allen was another victim of Insomnia's spell that forced the world to go into an eternal sleep. His nightmare began with a call he received from Iris. Kid Flash, Wally West, was down, and it happened after he tried stopping Gorilla Grodd wielding the Spear of Destiny. Jay Garrick arrived, stating that he was also present at the scene and could have stopped this from happening if he'd not blown his ankle. Gorilla Grodd was using the Spear of Destiny to amplify his telepathic abilities, and when Wally came in the way, he unknowingly slowed down. Barry visited Wally in the hospital and found him in a terrible state. The spear caused an infection, which, owing to Wally's fast metabolism, kept spreading to all his organs exponentially. Barry watched Wally in the state and wondered if it was all his fault to let Wally take up the mantle of Kid Flash. Wally apologized to Barry for being slow and mentioned that he'd seen a monster while confronting Grodd. Barry then visited Gorilla Grodd at Iron Heights, who not only stated it to be an accident, but also angered Barry enough to make him lose his calm. Barry, in a fit of rage, phased through the barriers of the prison and lashed out violently at Grodd. His hands were covered in blood, and Grodd was down, barely breathing. The guard stopped Barry, and he next visited the Justice League Watchtower. Upon arrival, he was punched by a Green Lantern, who stated that since no one usually came up there anymore, he mistook him to be an intruder. It was Hal Jordan, but with a grotesque, distorted face. Hal explained that in the events of the final night, he absorbed the Sun Eater. It killed him, but his will survived, and thus his appearance changed. Without further question, Barry asked for his help, and Hal suggested him to go back in time and see what made Wally slow down. They went to the room with the cosmic treadmill, and as Hal used his ring to hold it, Barry began running at full speed. Barry stated that there was something different about everything that's been happening, and he felt that someone was watching him. He ran at full speed, and despite the Speed Force resisting his entry, he managed to move back in time to the point where Wally confronted Grodd. Wally fought Grodd, and Barry watched as taking any action could destroy the natural flow of reality. Finally, he noticed Wally's monster, and that is where the issue Night Terror Flash comes to an end. Nightwing. The story of Nightwing's nightmares begins with Night Terror Nightwing. Being asleep, Nightwing opens his eyes to find himself restrained. He was perplexed but recognized the place. It was Arkham Asylum, where the guards were pigs. They called him a killer and asked him to dress up. Nightwing, clueless, was made to walk through the corridors, and the guards told him that all the inmates were excited to see him. He was thrown into a cell, and the guards informed him that they would be soon taking him for his treatment. They also added that he should be nice to his cellmate. This further confused Nightwing, as no one was present there. Nightwing, losing his calm, began banging on the doors for someone to explain to him what was happening. His calls were answered by Two-Face from the adjacent cell. He stated that the word was out about what he'd done, and although Two-Face was called a monster, Nightwing was the worst one. Soon, Nightwing found himself being chased by a bunch of police officers who were animals. Nightwing believed all this was not true, and it was surely someone else's memory. Being cornered, he took out his batons and began fighting them. One by one, he took down, but the officers with electrical prongs managed to subdue him. Nightwing was certain that all this was some sort of a nightmare, but he had no option. He was taken into a medical chamber where two rat doctors began their treatment under the guidance of a warden from the other room. Under his orders, the doctors gave him bolts of electric shock, following which Nightwing used all his strength and freed himself from the restraints. The doctors removed their masks, and they revealed themselves to be zombified versions of his parents. Nightwing recalled having such nightmares and realized that someone was messing with his mind. He broke the mirror before him and found the warden, who was none other than Insomnia. As Insomnia struck him, Nightwing found himself in his cell, inferring that all of this was a dream. After he was thrown into the cell, soon he heard a voice underneath his bed when he found Scarecrow, who finally told him that the reason he was in prison was for killing Batman. That was not it. Nightwing noticed another prisoner being taken into another cell, and it was Barbara Gordon, the woman he loved. She'd been transformed into some sort of a cyborg with metal wires coming out of her body. Nightwing began yelling at the top of his voice, and that was where the issue came to an end. Robin, Tim Drake. One of the most fascinating stories of Nightmare was for Tim Drake. Showcased in Night Terror's Robin issue 1, the story of Tim Drake begins with him jumping in and taking down goons at Gotham City's shopping mall. As he does, he's in touch with the Oracle, who was also monitoring Jason Todd tracking a heroin shipment. Soon, Insomnia's purple smoke takes them down. Both enter the Nightmare realm, and Jason Todd smacks him, stating that the last time he was in a dream with Tim Drake, he punched him, which turned him into cartoon birds. Tim states that he felt the punch and it hurt him, which implied that if in a dream he could get hurt, it meant they could die in it as well. Soon, the two are shifted to a graveyard with hands pulling them underground and separating them. Tim Drake is taken to his father's apartment where he hears Captain Boomerang attacking his father. He tried saving him, but Captain Boomerang murdered his father. A monstrous version of Captain Boomerang stood before him, stating that he failed to save his father just like before. Boomerang stated that he would be running the simulation again and again for Tim to try to lose every time. After running it 52 times, Tim goes for Captain Boomerang, who kicks him so hard that he crashes against the refrigerator. Stephanie, with the rest of the Bat family, arrived, but all they did was mock him for his failure. They left, and as Tim followed them to the other room, he found them murdered by Boomerang. He then lands in his room and begins crying and screaming for all this to stop. His screams were answered by Jason, who struggled with his own set of troubles. They spoke and decided that they needed to focus and come up with a plan soon enough, or there would be no returning back alive. Red Hood. Jason Todd, aka Red Hood, was taken into the realm of nightmares along with Tim. When the two got separated, Jason was brought to face a monstrous version of the original Red Hood. Jason shot at it, but it only multiplied itself. He kept struggling against them, and by the end of Night Terror's Robin issue 1, when he heard Tim's screams and answered, he was shown to be surrounded by innumerable monstrous Red Hoods. Shazam! Mary Marvel. As the power spell of Insomnia engulfed the DC universe, Night Terror Shazam showcased the nightmares of Mary Marvel. The issue begins with a regular day for Mary Marvel, in which she's exhausted after using her skills to help citizens. Once she returned home, she crashed on her couch and fell asleep, but her siblings arrived to wake her up. They informed her that a fire had broken out at their house and they needed water. As Mary left the house, she found they were in the middle of a desert. Perplexed and shocked, she transformed into her divine form in order to get help, but Billy Batson, aka Shazam in the uniform of Black Adam, stopped her. With his eyes burning red, Shazam summoned a bolt of lightning that struck their house and destroyed it completely. Perplexed and terrified, Mary approached her house, but Shazam caught her, stating that her siblings were dead because of her. He summoned another bolt of lightning that stripped Mary of her powers. Nevertheless, Mary ran to her house and attempted to save her siblings. She screamed Shazam, and the next minute she found herself transformed while she lay asleep on her couch. She found her siblings unharmed. However, the cycle of nightmares kept taking place every day, and one day after waking up, When she found her foster parents turning into monsters, she realized that whatever had been affecting her dreams was also affecting her real life. However, she was unaware that throughout, she was actually in the nightmare realm. One day, her parents decided to take her to the sleep center for her treatment. They boarded a limo with a driver who seemed to know everything about Mary. Soon, the driver revealed himself to be Insomnia and drove the car off a cliff. Mary transformed into her divine form and saved her parents. Once she reached the sleep center, she asked her parents to stay outside. As she went into the sleep center, she noticed it to have an eerie feeling. The receptionist asked her name, which forced her to transform into her human form, following which an unknown entity knocked her down. When she opened her eyes, she found herself restrained with Shazam tormenting her. He went to each of her siblings and shouted Shazam, only for each of them to be burned into dust. Mary tried using the word Shazam and transform, but her throat was clogged with water. Next, Shazam walked towards her ear and whispered Shazam, which turned everything black. Ravager. Like most of the DC characters, Rose Wilson, aka Ravager, was also one of the victims of Insomnia, who would cast a spell to put everyone in a deep sleep in order to navigate through their nightmares to find the Nightmare Stone. Night Terrors Ravager Issue 1 showcased Rose's struggles in the realm of nightmares. The issue begins with Rose hiding in her room, with two vicious monsters hunting her. The story begins with Ravager in her costume, without any clue as to why or where she was. She heard someone begging for help, and she wasted no time rushing toward the source of the voice. She entered a cabin where two monsters were about to kill a young Rose. She fought the monsters, and after slicing her blade through one of the arms of the monster, she managed to escape with a young Rose. The monsters were shown to be commanded by their leader, a monstrous Deathstroke. The two managed to hide in an abandoned cabin, and when Ravager asked Rose who the monsters were and why they were after her, she said the leader of the monsters was known as the Murder Man, and the other two as the Slaughter Squadron, Rager and Vexor. The girl reveals herself to be Rose Madison, growing up with her foster parents. This confuses Ravager, as by her looks, she was a version of herself, but she never knew who the Madisons were. Ravager concludes that the monster chasing her was in fact her father, who wanted to quit working for Insomnia and use her as a bridge to get back to the world of the living. Rose went on to explain that they required blood to establish the bridge between the world of the living and of the dead. And as Ravager believed someone to be messing with her precognitive ability, Rose stabbed her with a knife. Soon, Rose, with an evil smile, was joined by the monsters who stood before a wounded Ravager. While in the nightmare realm, Ravager was shown struggling, and in the real world, she could be seen lying unconscious in the streets. There were yet many to be taken into the nightmare realm. Peacekeeper number 1 arrived and rescued her under the order of Stormwatch. Joker. Similar to the superheroes of the DC universe, the villains were also thrown into the realm of nightmares, and while the heroes had their nightmares of devastation and destruction, it sure is interesting to see what was the Joker's nightmare. The Joker is known for his insanity and considered his greatest thrill to be messing around with Batman. In his world, Batman was his playmate, and losing him was indeed his biggest nightmare. Dark Knight Terror's Joker Issue 1 elaborated on Joker's nightmare, and it was having a normal and regular life. Unbeknownst to the Joker, he's asleep and in his nightmare realm. His story begins with Joker and his minions fighting Batman while conducting a heist. However, when Batman charged at Joker, he slipped and fell over his face and cracked it open. Joker laughed and stated that he needed better shoes. He waited, but the Dark Knight did not get up or respond. He was dead, and Joker could not believe that he lost his nemesis. His goons poked to see if he was unconscious, and when they moved him, his bones mangled and twisted terribly, inferring that he was actually dead. When Joker's minions asked what to do next, he stated that they should simply pack up and leave, as there was no point in continuing with their heist. They took Batman's body in his truck and arrived at the local diner. Joker had lost all his enthusiasm, and after 2 days, when he went to rob unrefined uranium ore from a ship, he realized that there was nothing that could stop him, and they could take whatever they wanted. He suddenly realized that there was no fun in being a criminal and slowly succumbed to depression. Joker then decided that since Batman had died and he'd lost interest in crime, he should get a 9-to-5 job. We next see Joker moving into Wayne Enterprising, where he was being interviewed by Insomnia under the name Mr. Kaiser. Joker was unaware of who Insomnia was, and at the end of the interview, he was taken on board. He's been given a cubicle, and Joker believed he could cause a little mayhem within the company. He used the company's database to find information about all the company's finances and secret weapon projects, but he had access to none of them. Soon, a lady named Helen arrived at his cubicle, and when she introduced herself, Joker asked her why he could not access any of the confidential files. Helen laughed and explained that their work was to approve the already approved projects only. Joker realized that he was now part of a mundane system, and although he felt like killing Helen, he stopped. As soon as the boss entered the room, everyone left. Joker presented him with a drawing, and the boss was infuriated at him. He yelled at him for not knowing what his job was, following which Joker smashed a microwave oven in his head. The next day, Joker was about to explode explode the entire building, and just as he was about to do it, Mr. Kaiser, or Insomnia, arrived, stating that he would be promoted to the post of a manager. In a few weeks, Joker could be seen being a part of the system and enjoying his work. One day, while returning home, a few goons ambushed him and began beating him. Joker managed to resist and give them back a few blows, and that was when he noticed that these thugs worked for one of his minions. They apologized and stated that they'd heard rumors of Batman being alive. The next day at the office, when Joker cracked a joke about how Batman was dead in his closet, everyone laughed, but no one took him seriously. Some of them stated that Batman was still alive. Later, when Joker returned home, we got a glimpse of Batman's corpse hanging from his closet, and that was the end of the issue. Punchline. Alexis Kay, aka Punchline, was Joker's right-hand woman and the leader of Gotham's Royal Flush Gang. When Insomnia's sleep-induced spell spread throughout the world, it affected her as well. Night Terror Punchline Issue 1 elaborates on that. The story begins with Punchline and her Royal Flush Gang looting a facility in Gotham while the entire world is sleeping. She was shown to be aware that something had caused everyone to fall asleep, but little did she know that she was down as well. Punchline considered the heist to be an easy one and obtained the punch card that would let her gain access to the Gotham Clock Tower. However, just as she was about to leave, Batgirl arrived. The two battled and it ended with the death of Batgirl. Punchline was delighted at her success, and taking over Batgirl's bike, she rushed to Gotham's clock tower. On her way, she stated that tonight she was the biggest threat to Gotham, and her only remorse was that there was no audience to watch her. She managed to enter the clock tower easily and watched over all the Bat-branded gadgets and costumes. She looked into the Bat computer, which had all moments of her life on display. Punchline wondered if Batgirl was, after all, a big fan of hers, and that was when a zombified Batgirl appeared before her and attacked her. She was scared but fought her, and when the zombified figure punched into one of the screens, wires began wrapping around her, transforming her into a cyborg zombified monster. She escaped and jumped out of the window, and as she descended using the Bat glider, the horrifying monster got hold of her. She screamed at the top of her voice, and that was the end of the issue. We can only wait to find out what happened next. Poison Ivy and Janet. We next move on to Poison Ivy, who was another victim of Insomnia's wrath. Once she fell asleep, she arrived in a world full of colors. She was confused as to where she was, and that was when she was greeted by Harley Quinn with a cake. She welcomed her to their new home and stated that this was the home they'd always wanted to have. However, it was too good for Poison Ivy to believe, and she still looked confused. As Harley took her outside, stating that the weather was too good to eat inside, she found a happy Batman in a pink shirt greeting her as well. Poison Ivy was paranoid about seeing Batman, and just as she stated that they should be leaving, pregnant Selina appeared before them. Batman and Selina were married, and they were about to have a child together. Janet was also trapped in Harley's nightmare. She remembered being at Trader Jim's buying blueberries and then being brought out here. As she wandered across the streets, she met the rogues of Gotham with creepy smiles. She finally reached the house where Poison Ivy, Harley, Selina, and Batman were having a good time and pointed out that everyone seemed so creepy. Janet stated to Poison Ivy that all this was not real, but she refuted, which showed that Poison started believing all this to be true. However, when Harley and Poison Ivy went inside and kissed, she realized things were not right. But that was too late, as we see Harley's face change into a creepy one. Meanwhile, the others outside the house surrounded Janet with the same creepy smile. Black Adam. Black Adam, one of the strongest beings of the DC universe, couldn't help himself from being thrown into the realm of nightmares by Insomnia. Showcased in Night Terror's Black Adam, the story begins with Black Adam fighting against the goons of Al-Hazred at Karnak. While trying to find the location of Al-Hazred, Insomnia's purple mist attacks him and makes him fall asleep. As he opens his eyes, he finds his beautiful home ground being transformed into a hellish nightmare. Soon, creatures like Banshee charge toward him from a rooftop and attack him. Black Adam is perplexed, but that didn't stop him from taking them down with full rage. As more of these creatures appear and attack him, he believes that something is wrong. The attacks of the creatures make Black Adam bleed. With a massive blast of lightning, Black Adam flies high up in the sky, only to get struck with another bolt of lightning that transforms him into his human form. Becoming Teth Adam, he tries to get back up to his feet, and a cat introduces himself. The cat's name was Bast, and he asks Teth Adam to try and get back to his divine form. Teth Adam shouts Shazam, but nothing happens. Bast asks him to try again, and this time it did transform him into his divine form. Getting back to his Black Adam form, he charges toward the tower, where upon arrival, he noticed a giant crocodile eating his son. He wastes no time in charging at it, but only to be struck so hard by the crocodile that he flies out of the tower and crash lands outside. Infuriated, Black Adam demands Bast to tell him what's happening, and that's when we hear a voice mentioning that he can help. It was, of course, none other than Batman. Catwoman. Catwoman was also thrown into the nightmare realm. Night Terror Catwoman issue 1 begins with Selina on the rooftop of a building in Gotham. The night seemed like a normal one, but it was a part of her nightmare. She noticed a man and believed he was about to cause harm to her Gotham City, but somehow could not recall his identity. She followed him, but was soon stopped by her sister Maggie Kyle, aka Sister Zero. Selina stated that she was after a man with face paint like the Joker, but Sister Zero refused to believe her. She stated that she had to attend to her duties and she was late because she had to stop her sister Selina from causing mayhem at Gotham. Meanwhile, the suspicious man escaped and Selina stopped Maggie, making her believe her words. Maggie took Selina back to her church, where she fed the homeless. Selina managed to win her sister's trust and they both left the church at night in search of the Joker-like man. They arrived at Amusement Mile and noticed Joker's goons. The two sisters sprung into action and fought them. While doing so, Maggie fell off the rooftop, and as Selina screamed in terror, she was caught by Batman and saved. When Catwoman arrived, Batman attacked Catwoman, believing her to be a part of the crime organization in Gotham. Surprisingly, when Selina called him Batman, he was shocked as he never told anyone that name. A snake suddenly bit Batman and he fell unconscious. Selina and Maggie carried him to Maggie's church and Selina gave him a dose of anti-venom. As Bruce got back to his senses, Selina sat on his bed, and they eventually began making out. Soon, the two left and were shown to be working together. All this was a part of Catwoman's dream, and she had no idea what was about to happen next. Deadman. Boston Brand, aka Deadman, was the hero of the Night Terror saga. When Insomnia was developing his schemes, he was the first one to sense it. Night Terror First Blood Issue 1 showcased Deadman sulking at his existence. Ever since he died, it's been extremely boring, but now he could sense some ghastly element spreading in the world. Searching for it, he came across Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. All three of them were clean, but there was something supernatural surrounding them. He followed them into the Hall of Justice, where he encountered the nightmarish corpse of John Dee, aka Dr. Destiny. When he tried possessing the body of John Dee, he realized that it wasn't a corpse but a nightmarish construct. He immediately possessed Batman and informed the others about it. When the news of Dr. Destiny suffering from nightmares at Arkham reached Batman, he followed him to Arkham to notice the happenings. When Insomnia made Batman fall asleep, he possessed Batman's body once again to fight the constructs of the Nightmare Realm. He fought Insomnia and even possessed his body to learn about the Nightmare Stone and Insomnia. However, all that is left to unfold in the upcoming issues of Night Terrors. Insomnia. We finally have the main villain of the Night Terror saga. He is the new villain in the DC universe, Insomnia. Not much has been revealed about the character yet, but he's been showcased as an extremely powerful and tactical villain. When Deadman briefly managed to possess his body, he learned about his origins and that of the Nightmare Stone. It all started at Arkham Tower when Lazarus Island erupted. The Lazarus Rain was cursed with magic and it changed people, and it happened the same with Insomnia. It gave him the power to sneak into the minds of the people. It can be inferred that he first went into the mind of John Dee and used his power to amplify his capability and make everyone fall asleep, with everyone being a victim of their own nightmares. Deadman also obtained a glimpse of the creation of the Nightmare Stone. The Nightmare Stone was created by a sacrifice. When John Dee got his hands on the Nightmare Stone, he turned it into something evil and twisted, following which he feared the stone. Hence, he hid in the nightmares. We finally come to the end of the video, and we hope you've liked our content. The Night Terror saga has already laid its foundation, showcasing the worst nightmares of the DC characters. The second half, which is scheduled to be released in August, will most likely be explaining how the characters will be surviving the manifestation of their nightmare. Do let us know your favorite nightmare in the comments section. With that, we conclude the video. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks everyone.